Oh, go on.
I have a question.
Go ahead, please.
I want to know for the classifier for my group. The classifier, the basic of the classifier is all the reference are my specialized register for the classifier of my group.
Anna, do you want to pick that one up?
Yeah, sure, I'm happy to. So, yeah, I mean, essentially, you can put anything through the classifier, and when you do that, it automatically goes to actually 3 or 4 different classifiers now. It goes to the RCT classifier, and then it goes to the review group classifier, and then it goes to 2 new classifiers that are in there as well, which is the economic analysis and the systematic review classifier. When we did the latest release, I think we refreshed everything that already had a classifier score and potentially everything else. Gordon, can you just remind me what actually?
Yes, we did. We ran everything through. The reason for doing it was that when we first generated the classifier scores, it was on the legacy data that we had, and some of the groups were really late becoming live in the CRS, and what that meant was that some of the records that we harvested into the CRS were not as rich as they could be. So what we thought was the right thing to do was once we got everybody's records in there and everything had been tidied up, was to rerun things through the classifier just to make sure that we got the best classifier scores we could find. So in whenever it was, end of last year, middle of last year, or maybe it was this year, I can't remember when it was, we ran all records in Central and all records in the rest of the CRS that were not in Central through the classifier, excluding those that only had a title, I think, Anna, that's right, isn't it? Did we exclude those?
So under the new classifier now, we have put a rule in place that title-only records or records with very little abstracts, i.e. they're sort of not really abstracts, there's just something in the abstract field, don't qualify for an RCT classifier score. Sorry, just bear with me 2 seconds.
I'll continue talking while you're letting the visitors in. The other thing that it is worth mentioning, and again, we'll talk about this in detail on the classifier webinar, but it is worth mentioning that when we send records to the classifier now, we split the group of records that we're sending into 3 different batches. So records that came from clinicaltrials.gov, provided they've been entered in the CRS following the harmonizer guidelines, are sent to the specialized clinicaltrials.gov classifier. Records that are ICTRP records are handled in the same way, and then records that are just journal references or ordinary references are sent to the RCT classifier. So it is worth mentioning that, because getting the clinicaltrials.gov records formatted correctly in your source record means that they'll go to the right classifier and they'll get the right classifier value coming back.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Maria Inti again.
Yes. You can see me wanting to ask, Gordon.
Go for it.
So I have a question around the assessments of the classifier. So I imported a folder with 100 records, and then I run it through the classifier, and then I have my assessments. I was trying to retrieve these assessments. So when I export those records again after having run them through the classifier, I cannot make those assessments export.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I think that's a nice feature that I think we'd like to add. So essentially what you're saying is when you actually, export the results, you'd like somewhere on, under each of the results, either the score or the probability of its likelihood of being an RCT or whichever classifier it is you're using.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I then provide, for example, my authors with EndNote
Yes,
libraries, and
I
I
know.
could put them into
Yeah.
groups and say, these are the highly likely records. And the only way I've managed to do this in CRS until now is clicking on all of those records that have a certain score and exporting them first, and then having to do a second export. But I
get it.
That's very clumsy.
Yeah. I mean, one sort of a slight sort of workaround to that at the moment would be to just order them from highest to lowest, and then at least you can say to your authors, okay, the highly likely ones are right near the top and then very unlikely ones near the bottom. But the other thing I would just sort of suggest potentially using now is the Screen for Me workflow, which divides up the results into folders for you. It doesn't do it based on kind of ranges of scores, but it does it based on those that are within that kind of 99% recalls of possibly being an RCT and those that aren't. So those that are incredibly likely not to be RCTs go into one folder, and everything else that really kind of we feel that needs, things that need a manual screen go into another folder automatically. So at least you've got those two folders already that you can just export like that.
Okay, thanks.
We did do a webinar on, sorry, Gordon, just to finish, we did do a webinar on Screen for Me, so it's worth sort of checking that out. But as I say, we do hope to do another webinar that will combine, both Classifier and Screen for Me use, hopefully in the next couple of weeks.
Perfect. I'll look out for it.
Bro.
And you'll see that I've just put that through as an idea, as a suggestion for CRS Web, which I've just clicked post.
So if everybody could go and vote now.
That will happen.
Yay.
Any other questions on anything CRS related? Okay, I'm not seeing. Yep, no, Maria, go on, go for it.
Okay, last question. How much can I trust the deduplicator? I know because I'm a bit of a freak, and I don't trust people and things generally. So I would like to, be sure that this really works nicely. The thing is, I can't control it. I just have to trust it. There's no way checking whether the deduplicator got something right or wrong.
I think you can check. I mean, I think that's one of the main things in the CRS is that, in fact, it's potentially slower than other dedupes, but because you have to actually, you do get that opportunity to check, unless I don't know, what do you think, Gordon?
Yes, I think I agree with you that it can be cumbersome, and again, that's one of the development strands that we're thinking about prioritizing to take some of that cumbersomeness out of it. But it does enable you to see absolutely everything that's going on with the deduplication if you want to. It enables you to bypass having to eyeball everything if you don't want to, but at least everything that it finds as a potential duplicate, it will put on the screen in front of you if you want to go and eyeball them. And I think what we find is that people do that when they first start using it, and then as they become convinced that either the built-in deduplication algorithms or ones that they've designed themselves work, they tend to do that less. So it might just be a matter of doing, getting a few folders with known duplicates in them, and just doing some tests maybe for half an hour or so and convince yourself that it's right, and actually go through and look at all of the things that it's found. It's not going to dump anything without telling you. So you can go through and find stuff and check that it's right, and maybe just convince yourself that it's right or wrong, and then move from there.
Okay, so by just comparing the records and
Yeah, it shows you what it's going to do with the records. So it's I would do that. If you're worried, I would do that. But in general, I think the results are pretty good. The interface is a little bit cumbersome in certain areas, but and it's not particularly fast. But certainly in terms of accuracy, it's pretty good.
Okay.
In terms of showing those records, when I'm assuming we're talking about the deduplication on import, there is a short video on the portal that shows you how to look at those and what you can do with them. So I'll send you the link, Maria, and see if that would be helpful.
Yes, that would be helpful. Thanks.
On that note, I did wonder, seeing a few sort of newer names on this list, whether some sort of introductory webinar would be useful to anybody at this stage. Most of our webinars focus on new features, but if you're coming to it fairly new, that might be a bit daunting. I just wonder whether anybody has any interest in something like that.
Apart from me.
I'd be happy. We're always happy to do one-on-one sessions with people if they would, if they'd find that useful. I've got a yes from Valerie Wells. I'm tempted to say that we would need some guidance from the attendees on what particular things focus on. So the CRS is a really big piece of software, and trying to do an introduction to everything would probably take days, or at least hours. So we'd probably need a little bit of guidance from anybody who did want that sort of webinar on what they would find particularly helpful. So if that format is useful, we can think about doing a webinar like that. I think if people, even if only a couple of people are interested, I think it's worth doing. So we've got Maria Intry and Valerie Wells saying yes, please. So watch your space. We'll be in touch.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the thing is you have to use it and then make notes when you encounter problems or difficulties.
Yeah.
Because when I've tried to do that before, then I start to check the help file, and then I often find videos, and sometimes videos don't help me as much because I have to watch all the video to see if maybe my question is answered or not answered. So I guess because the help is distributed a lot via video and not on a written basis, which is okay, but sometimes it's just very time consuming to watch the entire video, and then you don't know whether your question will be answered or not. So I guess I'll just have to use it on a more regular basis, make notes on the issues that I encounter, and then come back and take up this offer of having a webinar with you guys.
Sure. We can definitely, some of the videos do have accompanying textual guides, but maybe not all of them. So maybe we can look at making more of those available as well. Anybody else got any questions for Gordon, Anna, myself? We've also got Candida from the sport team on the call, and Dave and Steve from Metaxas. So any questions for any of us, really?